Mike Ewall. I'm the founder and director of Energy Justice Network. We're a national group based in Philadelphia, and I live in DC. And I've been fighting incinerators since I was in high school in 1990, and have since been fighting them all over the country, and most recently in this region. And I've had the honor of meeting and working with these wonderful folks here on the panel. Michelle Bundy is going to go first. She lives in DC next to one of the trash transfer stations in the district. And Greg and Charles work in Baltimore against the threat of the largest waste incinerator in the country, and for Curtis Bay. So we'll just kick off with Michelle, then we'll get into Baltimore, and then I'll give some other context and bigger picture things on incineration, and we'll open up to questions. Sound good? And there's a lot of literature up here, folks should grab on the way out, and I'll pass the science sheet around at some point for folks to want to get in the loop and actually work together on this. And feel free to jump in with questions if they're not like going to take over the whole thing, or at least when I'm talking, others decide what their rules are, and we'll just so you all set, Michelle?
Can you reverse order, please?
Yes.
Back with the house, Michelle. Okay, so hi everybody, good afternoon. My name is Michelle Bundy. I live in Washington, D.C. And I'm here today to talk to you about my resident neighborhood, which is Brentwood. I have a couple of photographs here that I'm sharing with you. Some of these are, this is actually one of my neighbor's house across from 13th Place Northeast. Brentwood is a really tiny community. It's only about 16 to 20 blocks of houses. We live directly about 2 blocks away from a major trash transfer place. Originally, it was supposed to be a recycle facility, and it was opened in 1980. It was a recycle facility for exactly 1 day. And after that 1 day, they started burning trash the next day. So, you can come through the next pictures. These are my street. These are a mixed community of apartments, but going up here, these are all houses on the side. Most of these houses were built in the 1900s. My family moved into DC in 1953, and this was our second home. We first lived at U Street Northeast, which of course is nowhere where we are now. My mother and my uncle bought this home, and they initially bought the home for like $5,000, but the house was paid off in like 1973. So now the houses have passed the market value, and this is in Zone 5. We're called the industrial zone, but the houses here now, which have just put on the market the last couple of weeks, have come up at $400,000, $399,000, and a house that was redone across my street is $450,000. So that's what the new prices of people who are moving in. Go to the next one, please. So these again are some of the apartments. I just took these pictures as I was driving up the street this morning. And these are the apartments that are condominiums. Go to the next one. This is my church. This is the Israel Baptist Church. My church is less than 300 feet away from the trash facility. My church also has a daycare facility. So like I said, it started out as trash recycle. It's now just trash collection. So we have trucks that come from DC, Maryland, Virginia, and today I got a truck that was coming from Illinois with trash. All this trash is brought to our neighborhood, and it's burned in our neighborhood. See the next one? That's the shopping center that is directly within 300 feet of the trash recycle burning facility. Within this facility is a liquor store, Subway sandwich shop, Department of Motor Vehicles organization, a children's hair shop, a dialysis center. And if anybody knows what a dialysis center is, let me just see you raise your hand. Okay, all right, I'm glad you guys know what a dialysis center is. I'm supposed to be on dialysis. I'm actually living and standing in front of you with 10% kidney function. I've had kidney disease since 2001, and I'm supposed to be on dialysis, but I haven't started yet. To the next one. Here's the next one. Okay, that's Unity Healthcare. Part of my church's contract, which they got $2.2 million from DC government, was to build a family life learning center, and part of it is to also house Unity Healthcare. But there again, we're still within 300 feet of the trash burning. Next one. Next one. This is the wall. This wall was built. Behind the wall is the trash burning place. But what they did was we had a court suit with a law firm, Rose and Rose, who represented us. All the residents put in money. They tried to get the law firm to represent us and go to court. And what they did was, they lost the lawsuit. But when the day came out for the judge to inspect the facility, they cleaned up the facility that one day. So the judge found a clean facility. They built a wall to hide the facility, and the judge gave them a 25-year consent decree to burn trash there for 25 more years. Next one. Next one. Wall. Next one. This is some of the storage facilities that are located on W Street Northeast. Go to the next one. This is where the trash is. This is in your neighborhood it would be a cul-de-sac, but it's not a cul-de-sac. This is just where, these are the backs of the residential houses of 13th Street. These are the residents who are directly affected. I live 1 block away from the trash. They live on the immediate block with the trash. Go to the next one. Okay, this is Department of Public Works for the District of Columbia. Here is the trash that is brought in every Tuesday and every other day by Department of Public Works, which is the DC government trash. That's a separate facility that brings trash and burns trash. Next one. That's BET, and I'm sure most of you have seen, I don't know, Beyonce or whatever it is, and Black Entertainment Television. They relocated their other headquarters from where they were to here. So they're only there usually 8 hours a day. Go to the next one. This is where I took a picture this morning. This is just the back of a trash. This is actually a street cleaner right here, this piece right there. But that up there, those are all trash and trailers. They come in daily, and they come in every day of the week. The only day I think they don't come is on Sunday, but on the weekends, they park their trucks and their trailers of trash on W Street, and they cover them with a covering, but they leave the trash there. And they burn it until Monday. Okay? That's the same thing. That's another one. That's a trash truck coming out, and that's the picture I took this morning. Go ahead. That's another trash. Now, this is it's some kind of incinerator thing, but this has been there for a while. But most of that is like encased. But that's some type of recycling or electrical plant or something. I don't know exactly what it is. But they don't let you get close enough to take anything. There normally is a police car on this street every night, so that you can't come down and do anything at all. But there's a police car that's parked there. Go to the next one. Okay, that's the back of my church. But down the street from where we just saw the facility, directly across the street is the shopping center with the Giant Food, Home Depot, and then several retail shops. But my real concern is the Giant Food. So I approached Giant Food about trying to file a complaint with the Office of Safety and Health Administration. They cannot file the complaint because United Food and Commercial Workers Union will not back the complaint. But they want you to come in there and buy food. Food that's tainted by the odor of the burning, the carcinogenics. Every day, rats, roaches, possums, raccoons. This is what my neighbors have to be subjected to. In the summertime, we asked Councilman Duffy we asked him again, when are you going to help us clean this up? What are you going to do about this? He said, we're not going to do anything about it. Or in September, we're going to bring it back to the legislation. So in September, it came back. But that meant for all of once spring comes, you have flowers in your neighborhood, daffodils and everything. Once spring comes, and the first odor of the rain, it levitates and brings the odor directly to my residents. My residents are senior citizens that are old as 86 years old. So we are in our own prison because we cannot sell our houses and get enough money at a fair market value to leave, but we can buy anything to live in D.C. If you don't have $450,000 or $500,000 now, you will not live in D.C. in a home. And Zone 5 is the last affordable, quote unquote, affordable residential zone. That's the back of my church, and this is the roundabout. Go ahead, the next one. That again is those are the streets. That's just the street parking coming on. That's more of the houses. That's the back of W Street, and the reason that's the back of W Street is because these are houses here on W Street that are residential, 1300, 1400, 1500, 1600. At that end is Montana Avenue. But right here is DPW and their trash trucks, directly across the street from these houses. And what they did here was put a fence up. So what is the fence supposed to do with the trash? The next one. They're the trucks. They're the DPW trucks. Those are the government trucks. And it's nothing but a huge assortment of them. That's the Learning Life Center that my church just built for $2.2 million. That's the new building. But of course now we're not gonna really have a Learning Life Center that's gonna be effective because all the people who live, which my neighborhood is mixed, in the Section 8 housing, they've now all been displaced. So the councilman went behind our backs and made a deal with the people who own the property to now take all the Section 8 people who are welfare recipients and to move them out of the country, move them out of the county, move them out of DC. Wherever they go, they don't care, just as long as they leave. So they're cleaning all of them out and they're rebuilding houses of mixed income, low housing, apartments, and individual single-family homes. But all those people have to leave. So we asked our church, so why did we build $2.2 million Learning Life Center and we have nobody to service? Next one. That's the other part, that's the Learning Life Center. And that's back to the original. That's back to the original part of my neighborhood. The only other thing is that our council member did enact some legislation in October when the bill was passed to do two things. One is to ask the cleaning company, the trash company to clean 2 times a month. And then the only other thing was to try to increase the fines. But you cannot really increase the fines when the revenue they take out is $100,000 per month on trash. Now burning trash, that's the revenue they take every month. And they give nothing to the residents of Ward 5. My residents are mostly African Americans who have been there, some have been there since 1953, and the others have been there since then. And now with gentrification, we now have new residents who don't look like me, who look entirely different. So I'm hoping that the ones who look like me can bring about some change, because we've been subjected to this since 1980. And again, I'm standing. I'm not even supposed to be standing. I shouldn't even be here. But I'm here to try to help and find somebody who might be able to help us figure out how we can get change. The latest thing that the council member did this week was to try to invoke eminent domain, which is to use the government authority to take the trash companies away and to bring us the WASA sewage in place, to bring us the sewage trucks. I had to go to the library, read the document, and start sending text messages to each of the 12, because Mayor Barry just died. Mary Barry just died. So I had to sit there and text all day to the council to vote against this legislation. But this is what we have. This is what we have for the person we keep voting in, Kenny McDuffie, who looks like me. This is what he's doing. And every time we go down and try to talk to him, he evades us, he avoids us, he won't have an audience with us, and then he wants to know, what else can we do? Or what can we do? What can they do? I had to sit down and cry in front of the white reporter for the Washington Post, Mike DeBonis, and ask him, please, can you help me? Because we don't want this. We do not want to trade trash for trucks that are bringing sewage or smell like sewage. So tell me where this is not environmental racism or whether this is not environmental injustice. Somebody tell me, because I asked them, put it in Georgetown or put it in Cleveland Park, but they won't put it there. Thank you.
So, hi everyone. Hi. So, I'm Charles and this is Greg, and we're part of Free Your Voice. Oh yeah, and one of our other partners was Diane Witter, who's also here with us. And so, yeah, Free Your Voice is a student-led group based in Curtis Bay. Yeah, Ben Franklin High School, and so just in terms of introduction, I don't know the time.
Just a couple-minute introduction.
Okay, so yeah, we started off as a basic human rights group where community members, students, and teachers came together and like talked about what we thought of when we think of human rights. Do we feel like they're being addressed in everyday society, or do we believe that we have them? So yeah, using that framework, we eventually started looking at issues more closely in our community. And one issue that we felt more, I don't know how to put this, more closely affected by was the incinerator. And we found, sorry, this would be the nation's largest trash burning incinerator, less than a mile away from our schools and our homes, and this went on without any community involvement as far as we did. And like, we were going to a school that was less than a mile away from it, and we didn't even know that was going to happen. So yeah, before we actually get into the presentation, we wanted to show you a quick video that's done a good job in explaining the issue.
And giving just a sense, like what you did, of showing what this community looks like, what's it dealing with on a daily basis in terms of environmental burden. And this was produced by the students to tell the story of what we're going through.
My name is Cecily. I was born and raised in Curtis Bay, a tight-knit community in the city of Baltimore. Curtis Bay is my home, and it means a lot to me, which is why I want to show you what it's like to live here. Here's my high school. Last year, a group of students and myself created a human rights group called Free Your Voice. As a group, we transformed the way that we looked at the world in terms of our basic human rights and what we want for ourselves, our families, and our communities. We have a lot of things that we're proud of in our community. This is our garden. Beautiful, isn't it? The garden provides fresh fruits and veggies for the community because we don't have a local grocery store. But to be perfectly honest, I'm not a fan of bugs. And as you can imagine, the garden is filled with them. But it's worth it because the garden brings the community together. A lot of students from Curtis Bay Elementary School and community members helped to build it. We made the garden from the ground up and we're all really proud of it. It's something we can call our own. Now I want to show you our park. A park can serve as a kind of sanctuary, a safe place where children can have fun and be themselves. It's kind of like living in your own little universe, a place where the ugliness of the world isn't allowed. All communities should have this, but we don't. Come on, there's one last place I want to show you. This is Curtis Bay's backyard. Growing up, I knew the industry was here. I could see it, I could smell it, but I learned to ignore it. For some reason, I never felt welcome. I wonder why. Over time, it was almost as if it wasn't there, but it is. Curtis Bay and communities surrounding it are suffering on a daily basis. The pollution threatens our health and our environment. We know the air we breathe isn't clean. We know this, however, we lack answers to basic questions about how bad it is. What's worse is that we often don't play a meaningful role in the decisions that affect us. And the only ones who seem to be paying any consequences are community members who have to breathe the air. We suffer the most. Despite the pollution in the industry this community already has, there's a plan to build the nation's second largest incinerator, less than a mile away from our school, our garden, and our park. The last I checked, Curtis Bay is a community just like any other. People live here, our children, our families, our friends, and I feel the sanctity of human life is not being acknowledged or respected. All of this makes it feel like community members don't matter and are irrelevant, and that we aren't humans at all. But we are. I'm human, all the people of Curtis Bay are humans, and as humans, we have the right to fair development that respects our rights and puts community needs first. But this will only happen if we begin to learn, reflect, and act together in a way that allows us to solve problems that we're all facing together.
Charles is going to give a presentation that goes into some of the background of the issue that we're dealing with and give more information. Now, typically, this is a longer presentation. It's going to be a bit of a challenge, but Charles is up to run through this. And then we'll have time for questions and discussion and hopefully connecting our struggles.
Okay, so I already gave a brief introduction to what we are and how we came to find it. Well, I haven't really explained how we came to find it, but yeah, one of the main reasons that we're...
You're what?
Sir?
Oh, you're blocking.
Oh,
You're
sorry.
touching.
Sorry about that. That's okay. Okay, so... yeah, so one of the main reasons that we've been presenting is because we believe that we're on the path to actually stopping the incinerator. So we realize that this isn't something that we can just handle by ourselves, so we would like all of you to help us by getting involved and finding ways that you all could help us in your own way. So we have three main goals for this presentation. to share what we've learned about the incinerator, to have a discussion, answer any questions that you may have after the presentation, and find out who among you actually wants to help and how you can actually get involved. So how many of you guys actually knew since 2009 there has been a plan to build the nation's largest trash burning incinerator less than a mile away from schools and homes here in Baltimore? Okay, so yeah, when we first learned about it, we were just completely outraged how something like this could actually go on in our backyard without anybody, like, without us even knowing, especially since we were a frontline community force. But yeah, I'm going to give a little more background for the people that don't already know about it. So yeah, when we learned about the incinerator, we immediately wanted to research and learn more about it. We wanted to know how would it impact us. This incinerator would need to burn 4,000 tons of trash each day to stay in operation, and Baltimore doesn't even produce that much trash. They would need to import trash from other states just to meet that 4,000 tons. So, and that's all that trash would be tires, metals, plastics, along with any other household garbage that we produce every day. So, we wanted to know what happens when you burn that much trash. We learned that trash incinerators produce more pollution and greenhouse gases than Maryland's per hour of energy than Maryland's largest coal-fired power plants. And this incinerator would be permitted to release 240 pounds of mercury and 1,000 pounds of lead each year. And those toxins are directly linked to things such as cancer, heart attacks, strokes, asthma, and lower respiratory disease. We wanted to know where the incinerator would be built. It would be built in Fairfield at the site of a former pesticide manufacturing company called FMC. And we recently learned that Fairfield actually used to be a community just like Curtis Bay. We would go, when we actually connected with the former community members, they still have a reunion every year just to remember what that community used to be. When we talked to them, they would tell us stories of being able to go outside their house and pick fruit off a tree. And now that beautiful community is now this. That actually used to be the last remaining house in Fairfield that was taken down. We wanted to know how the nation's largest trash burning incinerator could be built in Baltimore when they're already overburdened with other toxic air emissions. We learned that this incinerator would not only be less than a mile away from our school, but we learned that it would also be less than a mile away from 2 other schools and less than 3 miles away from 18 other schools and public entities throughout Curtis Bay. So yeah, this slide is basically just reinforcing the idea that Baltimore is already overburdened with toxic air emissions. Curtis Bay has the highest level of toxic air pollution in Maryland. In 2007 and 2008, Curtis Bay zip code ranked first in the nation for quantity of toxic air emissions. And the Curtis Bay zip code still ranks 87th in the country for toxic air emissions out of 10,497 zip codes, and is still first in the nation out of 81 zip codes. And we learned even more recently that from another partner that we've been working with, that there was a monitor located in Baybrook that recorded the 3rd highest particulate matter concentration in Baltimore City in 2009 out of 6 monitors. And that monitor was removed in 2008 and has not been replaced. And a funny argument that we learned while one of our partners was presenting at a local church was that one of the arguments for that monitor being taken out was that the population of Curtis Bay became less dense, so they had to prioritize their limited number of monitors in someplace else. And another big point is that Baltimore has the highest rate of air pollution related deaths in the nation. And we learned even more recently that rate is higher, much higher than the homicide rate. So the main points of our presentation is that incinerators furnish jobs, money, and precious resources. So communities all around the world have been standing up to fight them, and due to the pressure they've been building, no new incinerator has been built in the U.S. since 1997. So again, as I said in the beginning, since we believe that this isn't something that we can just handle ourselves, we've been going out to other schools and other public entities throughout Baltimore and throughout Maryland to raise awareness on the issue. And yeah, so this is this was the video that we showed in the beginning. So yeah. So on the note of raising awareness, we wanted to know what the other community members actually thought about it. Like, what was their involvement in the process of actually getting this thing passed? And out of the hundreds of community members that we spoke to, basically no one even knew that this was actually going on. So, and pretty much everybody had like serious questions or concerns about it. So we don't have a lot of time, but this is, after a while of going canvassing through the neighborhood and asking people and informing people, they eventually got comfortable enough to actually give short video testimonies about how they felt about it. And so, yeah. So we started an online petition with the goal of getting 1,000 signatures, and we are currently at more than 2,000 and still counting. And with all this pressure that we've been building, we organized a big march starting from our school less than a mile away to the incinerator site. It was awesome. I spoke, some teachers spoke, and we actually had the principal lead the march in the school's bus. So yeah, that was pretty cool. Yeah, these are just some pictures from the march. So yeah, we eventually wanted to actually come up with a real strategy that we believed would actually stop the incinerator. So yeah, really big point is that, that we learned. Kurt Kramer, the project manager for Incinerators, said that the key to this is going to be the energy sales. So that brought us to the question of who would be buying energy from the incinerator. In August of 2011, the Baltimore Regional Cooperative Purchasing Committee contracted with Energy Answers to buy 25 megawatts of Tier 1 renewable energy. So this means that 22 public entities, including Baltimore City Public Schools, are indirectly supporting dirty energy. So yeah, on that same note, we really do not like this picture. Thinking about how schools are now supporting something that's going to directly harm students, it made us reflect on what we thought a school meant to us. And we eventually came out of, we do not believe that schools that we go to should be supporting something like this. So we contacted Baltimore City Schools to learn more. We actually got the contract between the city schools and the incinerator, and we learned that Energy Answers has until spring of 2015 to start producing power. But after that point, the city schools and other public entities can choose to opt out without any penalty. So, using that, we actually went to a school board meeting to basically just inform them and inform them about the issue and ask them to pledge to leave their contract in spring of 2015. So, yeah, more about the time crunch. This was a video from the school board. Sorry?
They agreed to ban the
Well,
contract?
there isn't a definite answer just yet. I mean, yeah, they have to go through their own process of actually looking at the issue, what we have to do. But we do have, yeah. So one of the school board members actually spoke publicly about it, and that she's been one of the biggest I don't know a good word, but
Allies.
like surrounding this issue, and she, like, it went from nobody of political importance, like actually saying publicly, like, what's going on with Energy Answers, like basically why are we supporting this when it's like obviously not going well. So
the school board meeting presentation was incredible. Charles is underselling it a little bit. It was an amazing display of passion, facts, and creativity. So the video we didn't show were two other student leaders who created a song. It was actually an environmental justice rap song. They performed it like live on the spot. I encourage everyone to watch it. You can get the link. It brought a standing ovation, and more than that, it just was a display of power and leadership in reverse. So we went to this place where the school board's in charge, and we completely turned the tables in a really positive and strong, principled way. Our ask there was to have the school board come to Curtis Bay to see firsthand what the community's going through. And so Cheryl Kashani, one of the school board members, who, as Charles said, is emerging as a real ally in this, along with two others came, and they saw for themselves that there's nothing going on in terms of construction at the site, and it comes back to the energy sale issue.
yes.
Can I just mention, as long as you're mentioning Cheryl Kashani, she's also on the board of the Baltimore Sustainability Commission.
Yep.
She's also on the Baltimore Community Foundation. So she's an incredible ally for you because she make waves in Baltimore. So if you get her on your side, then a lot of people.
Cheryl's great.
Okay, so far through our campaign, one of the biggest victories so far is that Energy Answers violated the Federal Clean Air Act. So, and they failed to buy tons of pollution offsets and are now facing $8 million in fines.
Quick note on that, Energy Answers all along has said they won't be polluting. This is going to, if anything, help the environment, not going to create any negative air pollution effects. So the reason that they can rhetorically say that, and they also say they're not an incinerator, they're a power plant. That's how they got around a state law that says you can't build an incinerator within a mile from a school. Well, it's a power plant, according to them. Also, if they had to follow the law, they'd lose $300 million in stimulus money. So that was enough to push back against the law. In the case of these, this is how they can say they're not polluting. They buy the offsets, and with our strange regulatory framework, that's enough to say we're going to buy the offsets from a shutdown at Sparrows Point, and we're going to buy the offsets from that, and therefore the tons and tons of mercury and lead and other pollutants somehow go away. Well, they didn't even do that. They didn't even buy the offsets, and so they have been ordered to stop. But they're settled. I mean, they're working hard now to get around that. So the fight is not over.
Okay, so yeah, we've been connecting with other public entities throughout Baltimore and throughout Maryland, and together we've been reaching out to other public entities that would be buying energy from the incinerator, and also been asking them to opt out of their contract with the incinerator in spring 2015.
And Diane, who is with us today, is one of the many people from across the state and the region who have gotten involved in order to help us push these public entities to do the right thing, to make the choice to leave their contracts. So during the discussion, it would be great if Diane could be a part of that and talk about someone who's not from the community and in the core group, but who's seen we're all connected to this issue. You know, our public entities are purchasing energy, and plus we all breathe the same air. So in many ways, this is an issue that affects all of us.
Okay, so yeah, basically our next steps right now are to connect with other students and teachers throughout Maryland and invite them to come to our next events, which is one January 17th. We're having a strategic dialogue, which would be, I think, a pretty good entry point for people just learning about this, because it's not only going to be a meeting on positive alternatives for our campaign, but it'll also yeah. And also, we're having a big action in spring of 2015 when the other public entities can opt out. So,
excellent. We were, before we came down to College Park, we were presenting to students in Baltimore City school teachers, so we tailored this for them. So we want to say everybody should be involved in this, not just students and teachers. Thanks a lot.
Is the strategic dialogue?
It's going to be at the high school at Ben Franklin, and if we can get contacts, we can send out invites to everybody. We've got a Eventbrite registration page.
It's a great segue to Guessing Around Lunch.
All right.
So it's good. These going this way. So these say energy justice on them, but I will make sure all these contacts will get shared with Free Your Voice so we can all plug you into both sets of battles and things that we're teaching.
Also, just as a strategic publicizing, we all should be on the CEEJH email list now because we're all here. And so if you send something to Laura, it will get to all of us, so you'll make sure that we're included.
Wherever you want, might be easier to sign up there so you can see this and I can look the way your face. You have a question? No?
I wanted to just say one other thing, and I want to apologize. Mr. Ewald, Mike is an attorney by law, but also Mike and I gave testimony before the committee, which is the Committee on Transportation. And I want to especially just ask you guys to just give him a round of applause because Mike is in it. All of the Mike's presentation, there were 11 other witnesses there who testified against it. And I feel like everything that he did with our committee on transportation and environment before Chairwoman Mary Shea and King McDuffie, that was really instrumental in pushing them. Mike has been following their legislation. He can give you more of a legislative breakdown on what the council members actually done and the pluses and minuses of the bill that he actually wrote that finally got passed to just minimize what he's doing. But Mr. Ewald was very constructive in helping us just get where we are now. So this has been since 1980, 1990, 2000, 2010, and we're now in 2014, going to 2015, before we've ever had any legislation to at least ask them to clean up the facility twice a month and to fine them heavy fines when they don't comply.
And I just say, having moved to DC when they're giving away free law degrees at University of DC for free law school for acting instead of brochures on that for everyone's interested. But I came to DC in 2008 and I was asking even before I moved there, asking folks in DC, what are the environmental racism issues in DC? And people would be like, the Anacostia? And I'd be like, well, what about the Anacostia? It's like, well, it's got dinner. And it took me 6 years to find out that Michelle exists and that her community has been fighting for 30 years against these trash transfer stations. And there are articles I found in the paper going back about 30 years about some of the folks like Reverend Sheeran that she worked with who also testified at that hearing. And no one in the mostly white environmental community was able to say, this issue is here in our backyard. So I think that was sad commentary on the state of the environmental movement and not even knowing that something like that is going on for so long. But I'm doing what I can to kind of put it on the stage and make sure that folks know that these are issues. And there are obviously current things with this whole switching out trash for sewage plan that is affecting our neighborhood. So my name is Mike Ewald. I run the Energy Justice Network. It's a group I started in 1999 after almost a decade of fighting grassroots environmental battles in Pennsylvania and needing to fill a niche that wasn't being met in terms of industries like natural gas power plants and other things that groups were not really paying attention to. So they needed to create a group that can really help grassroots folks on these issues across the whole country. So we help folks fight dirty energy and waste facilities of all sorts. This here is one of our projects. We have an energyjustice.net/map webpage that basically tracks the existing, proposed, closed, and defeated dirty energy and waste facilities of various sorts. It's interactive. You can sign in, say, here's my group, we're fighting this facility, or oh, this facility is not in there yet, it's a proposed one, put it in our map, let people know you exist, link to your own websites and resources, upload things. So we're trying to make it like a grassroots, like Facebook for grassroots facility fighters type of site where we're not social media engineers, so it's not that easy yet, but we're working on it. So this is a map of where the trash incinerators are in the country. And you can see there's a bit of a trend. Yeah, there are reasons for that. We don't have to get into that right now. But as far as the local trends in environmental justice, I put this map together to visualize where the environmental issues are on a lot of the bigger toxic problems in DC. And as many of you probably know, if you've been here for a little while, DC is one of the most segregated areas in the country. It's also one of the most gentrifying areas. I think 3 to 5 most whitening zip codes in the country are right down the middle here. But basically, white folks to the west, black folks to the east, and being pushed into Prince George's County with gentrification is the demographics of DC. And all these little dots here are where some of the major polluting issues are in the city. So there's a bit of a trend. And on the waste issues, we have 2 big city-owned trash transfer stations, one here at Fort Totten and one down here at Benning Road. And then 3 private ones that don't need to exist. The capacity is there that we don't need to use them. But the ones that are having the most impact are the ones near Michelle's community, right clustered here in one little area in Ward 5. So basically, what trash transfer stations do, they transfer trash from small trucks to big trucks, so they can bring it out to other places where they are burned or buried in landfills and incinerators. In DC's case, they used to have an incinerator out where one of the trash transfer stations, and formerly, until a couple years ago, a big power plant we're at Benning Road, is 98% black, 52% poverty there, and that's the place where a couple years ago the city was starting to think about maybe we should build our own incinerator. And we're like, well, gee, I wonder where that'll go. And we managed to get enough hints out of the system and folks in the industry to realize that the only place they even have space to build this and the infrastructure for it, the only place there was any chance of it actually going was Benning Road. And so we pushed back on that and basically created a political situation where within a year, the city went from thinking it was going to make the money and be a good idea to realizing that it was a politically impossible thing to do and it would cost them too much money. So our waste is still going here. And it looks kind of nice. This is Northern Virginia. This is the 12th most diverse community in the country. It's in one of the richest counties in the country, in Fairfax County. And there's an interesting piece I ended up writing up because the whole argument on environmental racism of you have this chicken or egg thing of who came there first. Was the polluter already there and the people came there, or did they bring the polluter to the community of color? Well, in this case, they have the chicken and the egg because they used to have DC's prisons located here, a number of them. And so they had a locked up community of color right next to, and this is since about 1910, right next to where in the 70s they started building a landfill. And then there was another landfill and a third landfill. And then in the 90s, the 4th largest trash burning plant in the country, which is this one. Then they shut down the prison in 2001 and built this very diverse community, which is a pretty nice neighborhood, if not for the fact that one of their horizons is this giant smokestack, and the other horizon down here on the southern end is this giant landfill that they tried to add 6 stories to recently, but we helped folks fight that off and that got stopped. So this is Fairfax County. You can see this is a race map of the county. So basically all the white folks are in these other areas, and the trash incinerator and 3 landfills are clustered right where this very diverse community of color ended up being moved into. And we can speculate into why it ended up being that way. Was it prices being slightly different? Was it redlining, housing market kind of steering people of color in that neighborhood? But that's how it plays out. This is not quite as big as the one they want to build in Baltimore. This is 3,000. This is currently 3,000 tons per day. Baltimore's proposal is for 4,000. And within the context of the county, it's actually relatively low income, even though it's above average income for the state and national averages. But in the context of this very wealthy county, it's low income and community color. Now, we've been working on DC waste policy, and that's why I've been sometimes testifying before DC City Council and me and Michelle. And we've managed to make some really good progress this past year. We got a ban on styrofoam passed this past summer. And in this package of bills, it also requires that all food serviceware be compostable or recyclable. This is going to take effect within the next few years. It also requires the city to come up with a zero waste plan, which is great except for the fact that there's nowhere in it that says by when do you come up with this plan. And we have these pro-burn freaks that are running our Department of Public Works. And so, I'll get into that one here in a second. But I managed to get an amendment changed to the definition of incineration so that it's defined as a form of disposal, not diversion. Because the city's been adamant on saying incineration is diversion from landfills. And they have this whole chart and makes it seem like a nice green thing to do. And so we now made a matter of law that no, it's not diversion, it's disposal, and that's something you have to move away from when you develop a zero waste plan that says 80% actual diversion. It's also, if there's some studies they have to do, going to have curbside composting collection in the city, electronic waste recycling, although we tried and for a while we're succeeding. I mean, we got the bill changed so that it requires that any electronic waste recycling not be done with prison labor or third world dumping or burning or burying those materials. And that standard got completely ripped out of the bill altogether by the time it got passed, because the industry got lobbied last minute. But I also got the place I live. It's a co-op with about 400 units. So in the past couple of months, we passed the first contract that I know of anywhere that says there's a no incineration clause in it. So the waste hauler, in order to get the contract, had to commit that our waste will definitely not go to any incinerator. So I'm hoping to inspire other places to do the same with the places that they live. Now, some of the threats we're facing, we have what Michelle was talking about with the waste transfer station being switched out with sewage trucks. I'm glad they would use eminent domain to shut this transfer station down, but definitely not to replace it with something else bad. But we also just learned this past week that the Department of Public Works in DC wants to do a new contract for 5 to 11 years of sending our waste to an incinerator. So the contract specifically says for waste to energy, which is a misnomer, but that's what they call incinerators. And even though it flies in the face of the law we got passed, that's what they're pushing. And it says it has to be within 50 miles of their 2 big city-owned trash transfer stations. And I know the industry well enough to know that there are only 4 incinerators that can mean. And the one of them that's in a white community, the one in Montgomery County, I believe, has something at the county level that says they can't take out of county waste. So that leaves the Baltimore incinerator, the existing one that has the smoke cycle that says Baltimore on it, that has mercury violations in recent years, that's right in the heart of that community. That leaves that as an option, and 2 that are in communities of color in Virginia, including Newark and Alexandria. So basically, this is a violation of the Civil Rights Act as far as I'm concerned. I think we're going to try to take the city to task on that. Now, Maryland, I just made this map today. Some of the dots aren't exactly placed, so don't take this exactly literally, but the regional counties. This is a map of the existing and proposed waste incinerators in Maryland. The green 3 dots are the existing ones. The one in Baltimore is the largest of those. That's 2,250 tons per day. And then there's we got one in Dickerston, Montgomery County, and the one in Hartford is the smallest one. It's burning trash and tires, and that's supposed to shut down in a little over a year. All the other ones, except for this yellow one, which is a victory that after a 10-year fight, I've been working with them for 8 of those years, they finally won against the plan to burn trash, tires, and sewage sludge. But the other ones here are all proposals. Some of them are very tenuous and maybe will never really materialize, but they're being talked about. Other ones are very serious, like the Energy Answers proposal in Curtis Bay. This is not even including the largest medical waste incinerator in the country, which is also in Curtis Bay in Baltimore. So this dot here is a little bigger to reflect that. But all these other ones are mostly for trash. Some of these, like these 2, are for poultry waste, which is a big concern on the Eastern Shore. So a lot of the policy stuff that I'm going to talk about now is driving a lot of this. Maryland is becoming a magnet for incinerators. So there are 3 main things in Maryland that are driving this, yes.
Just a quick clarification, when you say proposed, can you tell sort of what you mean by proposed?
Sure. So I have a very expansive definition of proposed. So if a company whispers in some meeting and says, we're thinking of doing this there, then it's a proposal. We're going to take that seriously. Because if you wait until they file an application with the state agency, forget it. Your best chance of stopping is before they even get that far, and they'll start stopping before they get that far. So I consider a proposal when you're just like talking it up, the deals are being made, whatever's going on behind the scenes. So there are 3 main drivers of this that I see. One of them is Maryland's renewable energy law. They call it a renewable portfolio standard. And that basically is the law that says that there has to be a certain percentage of renewable energy in the mix in the state. Now, Maryland is the only state, or I should hopefully not have to say the first state, they're trying now in other states, to put trash incineration from the 2nd tier, which is the dirtier tier, where they, in this state, phase out whether you can use it. So it's 2.5% of the state's energy has to come from tier 2, and then after a few years from now, it gets phased out. Well, they bumped trash incineration up into tier 1, the tier that grows, that has credits that are worth more, which is in competition with wind. That's where wind power is. So it's saying trash incineration and wind are just as good as each other. And that's just nuts. And folks fought this and lost. And it creates more of an incentive to try to build incinerators in Maryland because they have these credits that they can get extra money for selling their powers of this clean energy. Now there's a campaign, I know some of the groups in this room are involved in it, we can hear about that, but there's a campaign to push to double this renewable portfolio standard from 20% goal, so 20% by 2020, to being a 40% goal by, was it 2025? 25? That's what I'm talking about. So I'm all for having more renewable energy, but this is renewable energy as defined in a very dirty way that will not just get us more wind, but will potentially get us more trash burning, biomass incineration, and landfill gas burning, all of which are a serious problem. I'll show another slide on that in a second. The other two main drivers are this effort to push what we call the Covanta bill. Covanta is the largest incinerator company in the country, and they actually wrote this bill, and we know this because a copy of it in Microsoft Word leaked out last year, and you can look at it to see who made the document, and it was the company. So it couldn't get more obvious that companies are writing legislation. So this is a bill that doesn't even say incineration in it anywhere. It just says we're going to take this portfolio standard idea and apply it to trash. And we're going to say that 95% of the trash that is not recycled by a certain year has to not go to a landfill. That's how they frame it. What else is there? There's pretty much just incinerators and landfills. Some creative companies trying to change that, turn it to ethanol, which is another scam, and that's that one of those dots is actually a trash to ethanol proposal on that map. But basically, this is driving trash to be burned and then send the toxic ash to a landfill, which is actually far worse than just directly landfill. So that bill thankfully got stopped earlier this year and then the previous year. In the past two sessions, we worked to get that stopped, and a number of other groups were doing great work on that as well. And the final thing is the zero waste plan. Maryland's state government came up with the zero waste plan, which is a great thing to be coming up with. It even quotes the Zero Waste International Alliance's definition of zero waste, which says zero waste means not burning or burying waste. But in the zero waste plan, they say, but in the short term, we're going to need to burn a lot of it. And so it's a bogus plan that is using the idea of zero waste to act as if incineration is a path toward that. And so there's an actual public forum coming up on that on December 16th in Baltimore that I hope to attend, and I hope other folks can check that out as well. If you sign up on that page going around, I'll make sure you all know that that's coming up. So as far as where the renewable energy is coming from, this is part of the testimony I gave before the state legislature. In 2012, you can see the clean portion of that Tier 1 renewable energy was only, I forget the percent, 20-some%, and it's mostly wind, some solar. But 56.5% of what was meeting the Tier 1 renewable energy requirement was something with the smokestack. So we're talking about burning trash, landfill gas, blast furnace gas, biomass, and black liquor, which are all filthy things to be burning. They're actually worse than coal for global warming, and in the case of trash, they're worse than coal on everything. And then you have hydro, which just makes no difference because no one's building new dams, no one's taking away old ones, so funding them with this is just kind of throwing money away because it's not really helping the market.
What is the standard uptake right now? In terms of that, what is the total RPS on 2012?
What's the total, the percent that is required in 2012 of the total high? I don't have it off the top of my head.
About 8.5%.
8.5? Okay, thank you. So there are a lot of names used for trash incineration. I'm just going to go more quickly through this. This is a presentation I do on why incinerators are good, and I just want to highlight some things, and then we can open up to Q&A, maybe come back and focus on things if there's any questions. So there are a lot of different names for this. They're all incinerators for the most part. Some you can argue more, but a lot of these things that they'll insist to the death that they're not incinerators, but they are, and they're even legally defined and regulated as that, but they will fight you to the death over that word because they know it's a bad word. We also don't use the term waste to energy because they're actually waste of energy facilities. They turn trash into toxic ash and toxic air emissions, not into steam. And they actually destroy more embodied energy than you would get back if you actually recycled and composted or reused those same materials, because it takes 3 to 5 times more energy to remake them than you get out of burning them. So that's why I call them waste of energy facilities. So people that you're talking to, it's very important to correct their language. So if they say waste to energy, trash to steam, or landfill methane even was landfill gas, all these things, I stop people mid-sentence like, no, there is no such thing as waste to energy. You can't turn matter to energy without nuclear reaction. Yeah, that's not what's going on. So just clarify for people. And they're not working in Europe, but I won't explore that too much. So, this is relevant for Curtis Bay. When I was testifying before City Council a couple of years ago, well, 1.5 years ago, on this issue, the president of the trade association for trash incinerator industry was sitting right next to me testifying as well. And I made the claim that trash incinerators are the most expensive and most polluting way to make energy or to dispose of waste. And he admitted 2 of these things on camera. It's on the city website. I'm so glad that we have this documented by someone who's not trained in PR, because he shouldn't have said these things if he knew what he was doing. But he admitted that they're not power plants. That like when he said it's not fair to compare us to a coal plant on a megawatt hour basis of how much pollution we're putting out, because we're primarily waste facilities, not power plants. It's essentially what he's saying. This is a direct quote. So if you're ever in that argument, especially in that case in Baltimore where that's how they got away with murder, regulatory so far, you could just point to this and be like, this is what's really on. On the issue of whether they're more expensive than landfills, the same guy in the same thing on video also admitted that yes, they're basically always going to be more expensive than landfills. So even though in DC right now they're putting out a bid that says we want incinerators, and in the previous contracts and in public testimony, city staff admitted that incineration is more expensive, but they're still opting to do that anyway, which should be a violation of bidding law, so possibly they'll go after them on that as well. This is the industry zone data for how incinerators are more expensive than landfills. This is not the best comparison though, and they stopped continuing this data only because it's very regional and the geography isn't even as far as where these facilities are, but still the general principle is going to apply. It's also the most expensive way to make energy. This is the U.S. Energy Information Administration's data on how much it costs to build or to operate and maintain different types of energy. And on both conditions, trash incineration, even though they get paid to take their fuel, unlike coal plants and other fossil fuel facilities and nuclear facilities, they pay to get their fuel. They get paid to take their fuel, and they're still the most expensive to operate and maintain, and the most expensive to build. They create the fewest jobs, about 1 job per 10,000 tons of material per year at a landfill or an incinerator. But if you're recycling, reusing, composting, you get 4, 10, 20, sometimes 300 times as many. If you're looking at computer reuse, about 300 times as many jobs per amount of material processed. And when I say they're dirtier than coal, these are the numbers that'll be coming out in a report that I finally will have out by February is my goal. This is the same data shown visually, so you can see how trash incinerators compare to coal power plants on every pollutant for which there's comparable data. You can see they're far more polluting. Even on global warming emissions, where they're 2.5 times as bad as coal, biomass 50% worse than coal, but EPA pretends that this stuff doesn't exist. And even though there's enough fossil fuel, plastic-based stuff in it, that makes it 50% worse, 55% worse than coal. There's still, EPA is saying in a decision just in the past few weeks, that they're just not going to count all this. They're just going to pretend it's zero. So in the Clean Power Plan that we just did comments on, in order to solve global warming, we're going to move from coal onto natural gas, which is worse than coal for the climate, and onto biomass and waste incineration, which are far worse than coal for the climate, and that's going to be Obama's climate solution. So that's why we got my interesting comments on that as well. I'm going to skip over some of the rest of this so we can get to Q&A, but just see if there's anything super important to point out. These are just some of the health effects that have been associated with living next to trash incinerators, and we're compiling the studies on what other health effects that there's science showing a connection on. And this is where you get exposed to the most toxic chemical known to science, which mainly come out of incinerators, the dioxins. And this chart from EPA back in 20 years ago now, 94, is what made me go from vegetarian to vegan. Because I realized that 93% of the most toxic stuff that comes out in the environment that I'm fighting all the time is in meat and dairy products. So take that to heart. And trying to say on zero waste, but let's skip through some of this and just open up to questions. We have 10-15 minutes, so let's just open it back. Sorry. You want to come back up and then we can extra on the fact sheets on trash incineration and on the RPS as well. And the rest of it you can grab when you come up. So we'll start here and move around.
In the Curtis Bay situation, do you have any sense of what sort of contaminants or exposures that the neighborhood is getting from the existing industries in those?
So as Mike mentioned, the nation's largest medical waste incinerator is in the community. There's an awful lot of diesel truck traffic that runs through the community, so particulate matter PM 2.5 levels are very, very high. What's really troubling is that some of the air quality monitoring that was going on isn't going on anymore in the community. So there's a real lack of just access to the basic information. But when we look at the health outcomes in terms of heart disease, lung cancer, lower respiratory disease, aggravated asthma, death rates from those indicators are some of the highest in Baltimore City. So all things that are linked to the types of pollutants that are in high concentrations, so mercury, lead, PM 2.5, etc. So we've mapped the existing industry, and we've kind of 18 violators of the Federal Clean Air Act and Clean Water Act that are in the industrial Fairfield Peninsula, which is in the Fairfield Peninsula, which is the industrial area that surrounds the community.
Within what kind of radius?
Oh, it's all, it's the incinerators in that peninsula is less than a mile away, so it's all within a mile or two of the school and the community.
Other questions for the witnesses?
Just with the wanting to increase the RPS, is there also to get the incinerators out of the tier 1?
That would be very desirable to do. They're not just trash incinerators to worry about though, because you have landfill gas chewing up a good portion of it, biomass, black liquor, and other things like, I don't even know how gas furnace gas got in there, but we have all these different living technologies that are taking up a big chunk of it. Politically, it's very hard to try to get those dirty things out of there. So probably while we'll talk about the need to do that, what we'll try to do in terms of amendments is to at least make sure that if it gets expanded only for certain things, like say wind and solar kind of expansion. Try to add energy efficiency in there, so when they say it's too expensive to do all this stuff, we're like, great, do something better that's cheaper, and put that in there, but not about combustion technologies in the expanded.
I'd like to just respond to that really quick. I have a comment on directly on that point. If you do want to support an effort to get dirty energy out of the RPS, there has been an effort for 2 years, legislation that would remove black liquor and inefficient biomass from the RPS. So you can support that effort that would redefine tier 1 renewable energy. As to doubling the RPS to 40%, that legislation actually would specifically change the solar carve-out, so it would double solar in the state. So it does actually look at specific resources and change the requirements for those. And I want to just push back a little bit on the characterization of the bill, which is that the logical leap that we're taking here is saying trash is in tier 1 of the RPS, that's bad. So if we double the RPS, we're going to double trash, which has sort of a seductive ring to it.
Ask you to introduce yourself first, please.
Yeah, I work for the Chesapeake Climate Action Network. We are one of the many organizations in the state that are promoting doubling the RPS. And we have our own fact sheets that you can also look at that walk through a little bit of the case for why we believe this will not increase trash incineration in the state. And if you disagree with any of our numbers, any of our analysis, please call us, contact us, we can talk about it. But it's not as simple as you double the RPS, you double trash. Because for the reasons that...
Because we need to get through the...
Well, hold on, you had a PowerPoint just on, and you're passing around a fact
Yes, I
that's
do.
explaining that...
Yes, and this is not your workshop. Thank you.
Okay, well,
there is
finally
documentation on all
get
these
the
points,
fact
and we're
sheet
not
here.
claiming that it's going to double trash incineration, so please don't mischaracterize our claims. Josh.
First, hi, I'm Josh Tolkien. I'm director of the Maryland Chapter of the Sierra Club. Mike, it's awesome to see Mike Ewall, Esquire, up on that PowerPoint, so congratulations, I have to say again. I had a comment and a question. Hi, everybody. We're one of the groups that Mike mentioned. I wanted to make myself and see if anybody else from Sierra Club can quickly raise our hands. After this workshop, feel free to talk to us if you have questions. But I actually was really moved by particularly your presentation, but also like the imagery of what you guys brought. I had a couple of questions sort of bringing us back on that. I know that one of the issues that communities often struggle with from a political sense, especially in that part of Baltimore, is your jobs versus the environment framework, which I believe is a false framework, but we know it's the same thing happening around the steel mill and lots of other issues. I was wondering if that has come in as like a factor when you guys have been debating this sort of as a community. I know that the steel workers were sort of pulled in early to support the project, and how sort of you guys wrestled with that in your discussions, and if that's been part of your conversation, have you reached any resolution? I know it's something we struggle with in a lot of arguments, conversations we get into. I was interested in how you process that.
I mean, I can offer some thoughts. It's a challenging tension, as we saw. It's not, the things we're debating aren't good job creators, so in a logical, rational world, we wouldn't be having that tension, but that's not the world we live in. We introduce kind of a way of looking at this. We use human rights principles, so we try to look at things comprehensively and understand that an issue like an incinerator is a matter of the environment and of health. It's also an economic issue. It's an issue of participation in the community that affects you. And so, yeah, the steelworkers, have a stake in this, and they actually got a pretty decent deal in terms of the jobs that would emerge from it. It is a false frame, and so there's an exciting opportunity to open up dialogue with a roundtable that's going to look to grapple with the tension between labor and climate. United Workers, the group that I work for, started organizing day laborers to work with dignity organization. So we have to figure out ways of working past these tensions, and I think it comes when we start to look at things more in a long-term perspective as opposed to a short-term project that offers these short-term promises to look at what could happen if we actually took the step towards looking at a real zero-waste set of alternatives that would have actual job creation as opposed to these small one-off projects. There's not a simple answer to that I have, at least. If someone has it, please.
I don't have a simple answer, but I want to put forth a few more ideas about that. I also want to give a shout out to Elizabeth Hoffman, who's sitting here, who's part of our Dream Team support group for your voice. So I'm Diane, and I want to say that one of the ways that I recommend we try to move forward together is we're talking big picture here, is to present positive alternatives, so that we can imagine a future together where low-income minority communities that have mostly been dumped on forever actually become democratic communities, where the communities themselves are building the power they need for their own economic well-being. So that's an idealistic vision, and unfortunately we don't have a lot of examples of that. We have fewer and fewer, in my view, especially now with the economic troubles for people that are multiplying. Having said that, somebody like myself wants to bring some ideas to the Free Your Voice project to see how things can move forward. So I'm just going to list some very, very general things, very specific to Curtis Bay that I've dreamed of. I work in the arts, so I'm always in the realm of imagination, pretending we can move to the perfect society. Curtis Bay is located on the coast. So I wonder about things like sustainable fisheries. I wonder about cleaning up the polluted waterways, and who has experience in chemistry, what companies exist that actually know how to clean up the dirty water, how to take all of the contaminants out of the soil from the chemical company that was there for so many decades. What plants do that? What processes do that? And then what if you actually then use what should be fertile soil right on the water for growing? Then there's a possibility of perhaps alternative transportation, because we're ridiculously dependent on fossil fuel transportation. It's killing us all. There's also the prospect of taking things that we would normally put into trash or incineration. And what about members of the local community themselves thinking about small businesses that they want to start. For instance, we were talking about this on the car ride down. Maybe furniture is refurbished and sold again, so that people in the community who might need job training in something that interests them have an opportunity. So if you're talking about economic well-being, that's community-based. These people would have actually living wage jobs that are based in the community, that some big corporation doesn't kind of swoop in, and then leave again. So I think this is also an opportunity for many positive alternative visions for zero waste and for economic health as well, that we don't need to present it as income protection. And that might help us all move forward.
Hi, I'm Rich Reese. I'm the energy chair for the Maryland Sierra Club. I really want to applaud everybody who's on the dais. You all had excellent points, and I'll tell you very sincerely, we're very sympathetic to what you're saying. We're sympathetic to CCAN in the sense of what they want to do, and we want to shape it so that it's actually going to be effective for what we're really all on. I also want to make a couple of comments on First Bay. It's an area that we focus on because there are two coal-fired power plants there. One lacks effective controls, and that's the Wagner plant. And that's one that we're really focusing on. So much of ozone pollution and particulate pollution comes from there. And the second thing is that there's a coal transfer facility there. And that's something that has more than the potential, it actually does pollute the water as well as the air.
Okay, we're basically out of time. Let's take one more question.
Yeah, I'm Laura Rosenthal. I'm part of the Greenbelt Compost Co-op. We're trying to start a worker cooperative with Greenbelt for composting. But I have a question about a strategy, again, about positive alternatives. So I'm wondering, in the strategic meetings you all are going to have in Baltimore in April, are you offering like the school board another energy alternative with information about like how much would it cost for them to sign up for a wind contract like this? Because people don't move away from something unless they have something to move towards, and also something that there's some kind of economic comparison. I know there are companies that will give you quotes on how much it will cost.
And that buying group together, all those groups you just mentioned buying together, probably.
That's the point of that cooperative purchasing committee, is to secure good deals. So we should do that. And that's the idea. So we're in the early stages, and we feel it's a time to leverage all the folks we got in the room but we do have actually a community member who has experience in the solar industry, whose kid goes to one of the elementary schools, and she actually she's been about 6 months putting forth a pretty amazing plan to use the land that the incinerator is currently leasing to do a solar farm. And so we are opening that up. She is totally down to talk about it, give criticism, pushback. This is her community, and she wants to see that in a way that's consistent with work with dignity, community wealth building, etc. Very early stages of the strategic dialogue will be a space to hopefully vet that idea. With who needs to be in the room. Hopefully, some of those folks who are here could contribute to really push it in the way it needs to be pushed. But absolutely, that's exactly what our strategy is. It's a divest, invest.
Mike, I just had a quick question for Charles. Read that real quick. Charles, I just am so impressed, I'm sure we all are, by all the work you all are doing there. I was just wondering personally why, as a high schooler, I was way too shy to do what you did. I was just wondering why personally you get so involved.
Well, yeah, I was like that before this, but so I always wanted to know what like a process like this actually was, how it actually happened, and basically the opportunity presented itself from one of my friends just happening to walk in with Greg and Destiny, another core member of the group, and he was like, "Oh, there's Charles. He's a cool guy. I think he'll like something like this."
Tell the story.
Ronnie, one of my friends, he's a cool guy. He's awesome, but so he walked in with Destiny and Greg. I was just like styling for the library, trying to get service learning hours. He was like, "This is a cool way to get service learning hours." I got involved, and then after I got more deeply involved, I actually liked doing something that I'd never done before. And so we eventually learned through like a common trend of when I came, he did not come, that he kind of inserted me in his place.
You wanted to play video games.
Yeah, Skyrim when it was really big.
We lost at Skyrim. Lost the organization at Skyrim.
So please come up and grab one of our handouts on your way out, and let's thank your presenters. Let's stick around for questions or something like one-on-one.
We have not done this project. I was looking at the landfill waste.
How ironic.
I know. That's what I was
Okay.
But, yeah, so, no, I felt